English Campfire.
Imagine working your entire life to land, a dream job in the tech industry.
Right, the ultimate goal for so many people.
Exactly. You finally get the offer, you walk into the building on day one, and within an hour you realize the company is essentially driving a car toward a cliff.
Oh, man.
And you have exactly 9 months before everyone just goes over the edge.
Which is a terrifying realization.
It really is.
Yeah.
So today we are doing a deep dive into the glossy cinematic myths of startup culture. Because we constantly hear the vocabulary of Silicon Valley thrown around, right?
Yeah.
In boardrooms and pop culture.
Right, words like disruptive or pivot.
Yeah. But we rarely get to look at the brutal high-stakes mechanics behind those words. So we're looking at this fascinating narrative case study today. It's about a 28-year-old software engineer named Nina.
Right, originally from Brazil.
Yes, and she spent 2 years facing constant rejection before she finally secures a position at a San Francisco tech company.
Which is a huge victory in itself.
Huge. But through her first 6 months, we get this incredible front-row seat to how the machinery of early-stage tech actually operates, and the psychological toll it takes to build something out of literally nothing.
Yeah, and the contrast between the cultural expectation and Nina's actual day one is just staggering.
I completely agree.
Because, the media trains us to expect this frictionless environment.
Right.
Sweeping views of the bay, minimalist architecture.
Kombucha on tap.
Exactly, kombucha on tap. But Nina walks into a loft apartment. There are 12 desks crammed together, and because the company literally cannot afford office furniture, 3 people are sitting on yoga balls.
Yoga balls. I love that detail.
Right, and the CEO, this 31-year-old named James, spends half the day walking around the office barefoot.
Which is just so perfectly Silicon Valley. But the lack of furniture, it isn't an aesthetic choice. It is a direct byproduct of their capital structure.
Absolutely.
This loft is the truest, rawest physical manifestation of a startup. And, a startup isn't just a young company. Like a local bakery is a young company, but it knows exactly what its business model is.
Right. Bake bread, sell bread.
Exactly. But a startup is an organization designed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model under conditions of extreme uncertainty. They are operating with extremely limited resources, trying to solve a problem that just hasn't been solved yet.
Which means there is no entrenched bureaucracy, but there's also absolutely no safety net.
Zero.
And the reality of that tightrope walk hits Nina during her very first Monday morning. James calls everyone together for an all-hands.
Right. And in a massive corporation, an all-hands meeting is usually this, highly choreographed theatrical presentation from executives you've never even met.
Oh, totally. With slick slides and corporate music.
Yeah. But in a 12-person loft, the all-hands is the raw, unfiltered steering wheel of the company.
Yeah.
It's the moment the collective strategy is laid entirely bare.
Yeah. James stands by a whiteboard and writes down 2 vital pieces of information for the whole room to see. He announces that the company has a burn rate of $80,000 a month and 9 months of runway.
Okay, let's break down the physics of those 2 numbers, because they dictate literally everything else that happens in this case study.
They really do.
Because runway is such a deceptive term. It sounds inherently optimistic, like an airplane skiing down the tarmac, gathering speed to soar into the clouds.
Really, like you're about to take off.
Yeah, but when you couple it with burn rate, it's much more like my cliff analogy from earlier.
Yeah.
You are driving at a very specific, inescapable speed toward total collapse.
Well, the burn rate is the velocity. It is the literal speed at which the company is incinerating its available cash just to exist.
So that $80,000 a month is going to, what, server space, rent for the loft?
And the salaries of people like Nina. And the runway is the distance to the cliff. It's the finite amount of time the startup can continue operating before that cash balance hits zero. So James isn't just giving a financial update. He is setting a death clock. He is telling his 12 employees that they have 9 months of cash left. Period.
So to alter that equation, they really only have 3 options, right? Raise more venture capital, start generating massive revenue, or drastically cut the burn rate by firing people.
Exactly. And if they do nothing, the company dies in 9 months and everyone is out on the street.
So that immense financial pressure forces this brutal, accelerated timeline for product development. They cannot afford the luxury of, theorizing or perfecting a product in secret.
No, not at all.
James mandates that the team must ship a functional product in 4 months. And the use of the word ship here is fascinating to me. We're talking about lines of code, yet they borrow this heavy physical term from manufacturing.
Yeah, it grounds the digital work in physical reality. In traditional manufacturing, shipping boxes out of a factory means the product is finally in the hands of the consumer. In software, shipping code is the ultimate proof of life. A feature doesn't exist until it is live, out in the wild, being interacted with by actual users.
Because shipping is the only mechanism a startup has to prove their underlying idea actually has value.
Exactly. And to survive the burn rate, they have to prove that value to investors, and quickly.
So by week 2, Nina's team is completely consumed with building a pitch deck.
Right.
And a pitch deck isn't just a PowerPoint presentation with some charts. It is an exercise in, extreme psychological distillation.
That's a great way to put it.
You have 10 to 15 slides to convince a room of highly skeptical people that your specific flavor of chaos is going to make them $1 billion.
Yeah, and if you waste 3 slides detailing technical features instead of explaining the market momentum and why your team is uniquely positioned to capture it, you are dead in the water.
A successful pitch deck tells a narrative of inevitability, doesn't it?
It does. It has to make the investors feel like a massive shift in human behavior is about to happen. And this startup is the only vehicle capable of capturing the value of that shift.
So Nina and her team pitch this meticulously crafted story to a room full of venture capitalists.
Yeah.
And the investors smile, they nod along politely.
And then they drop the classic line.
We'll circle back to it.
Well, the kiss of death.
And then crickets. They completely ghost the company.
Which is brutal.
The silence is deafening, and it triggers this fundamental survival reflex within the team. The manager, Avery, pulls everyone together and announces that they need to pivot.
The famous pivot.
Right. But I want to push back on the way this term is used in the industry. Because pivoting is often described as this elegant, agile basketball move. But if we look at the mechanics of what Avery's actually asking them to do, isn't a pivot just a polite euphemism for failing miserably and having to scramble to start over?
Well, that is a very common critique. But mechanically, a pivot is significantly different from a total failure and a reboot.
Okay, how so?
Think about the basketball analogy again. When a basketball player pivots, they keep one foot firmly planted on the floor while changing their direction.
Right.
In a startup, that planted foot represents your existing resources, your engineering talent, your underlying technology, and the harsh lessons you just learned from the market rejection.
Ah, okay.
You are cannibalizing your own code and momentum and aiming it along a new vector. You aren't starting from scratch, you are leveraging your sunk costs.
That makes sense. Slack is the classic example of this, right?
Exactly.
They didn't start out trying to revolutionize workplace communication. They were building a massive multiplayer video game called Glitch.
And the game failed completely.
It bombed. But the internal communication tool they had custom built for their developers to talk to each other across different time zones. That tool was incredibly sticky.
Right. So they kept the team, they kept the underlying chat architecture, and they pivoted the entire business model toward corporate messaging.
So they changed the vector while maintaining the velocity.
Precisely. But to execute a pivot successfully before the runway runs out, you have to fundamentally change how you build things.
Right.
Avery tells Nina's team that they need to stop aiming for a perfect, comprehensive launch. They have to embrace an iterative model.
To iterate.
Yes. To iterate means to abandon the traditional waterfall method of development, where you plan everything for months and launch a finished masterpiece, and instead produce a tiny, raw, almost embarrassingly basic version of the product.
You just put it out there.
Yeah. You release it, review how it breaks, improve it, and release a slightly better version the next week.
Which ties directly into a concept that sounds absolutely deranged to anyone working outside of tech, which is the fail fast philosophy.
Oh, yeah.
Because to the rest of the world, failure is something to be avoided at all costs. But in this loft, failure is weaponized as a tool for discovery. I mean, the case study notes Nina actually ships broken code twice. It goes live to their early users, it completely crashes, and nobody screams at her. She isn't fired.
Because the alternative is so much worse.
How so?
Well, imagine if you spend 5 of your remaining 8 months of runway secretly perfecting a piece of software, and then you launch it and you realize users actually hate the core concept.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You have essentially signed the company's death warrant. You don't have enough time or money left to build something else. The fail-fast methodology ensures that you figure out an idea is wrong within 2 weeks rather than 2 quarters.
You are preserving the runway, by ruthlessly abandoning dead ends.
Exactly.
And this entire engine is powered by an incredibly tight feedback loop. A feedback loop is just the mechanical process where the output of a system is immediately fed back in as the new input.
Right.
So Nina ships a feature, the system breaks. That breakage generates data. She analyzes the data, writes a patch, and ships it again.
Yeah, the goal of the engineering team isn't to be flawless. The goal is to cycle through that feedback loop so quickly that you discover the right answer just before the bank account hits zero.
Which, I mean, the logic is sound, but it completely ignores the biological reality of the humans executing the strategy.
Oh, absolutely.
The human brain is not naturally wired to thrive while constantly failing, pivoting, and cannibalizing its own work under the shadow of a 9-month death clock.
No, it's incredibly stressful.
Which brings us to the psychological core of this case study. Because you can master all the technical jargon, you can expertly manage your burn rate and execute flawless iterations. But knowing the mechanics does not shield you from the emotional, crushing weight of the environment.
Not at all.
By month 3, things look incredibly promising from the outside. Nina is a core part of the engineering team. She has successfully shipped real code that is being used by real people.
Yeah.
Avery is actively praising her contributions.
Yeah, she's doing great objectively.
But yet the case study notes that at night, Nina is paralyzed by this quiet, persistent certainty that she is a total fraud and that any day now, James and Avery are going to expose her.
Yeah, she is experiencing acute imposter syndrome.
Right.
It is the persistent, agonizing inability to internalize your own success, accompanied by the fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite possessing obvious objective competence.
The structural irony here is just fascinating to me. Professionally, Nina is the master of the external feedback loop. She puts code out, gathers the data, and improves the product. But her internal feedback loop is completely hopelessly broken.
That's a great way to frame it.
Her brain is taking in objective, positive data. She shipped the features, the code works, her manager is happy, and the psychological output her brain generates is, you are a failure who doesn't belong here.
Yeah, the internal loop is completely rejecting the empirical evidence. And the data shows she is far from alone in this.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The source material points out that approximately 70% of professionals experience imposter syndrome at some point in their careers.
70%. Wow.
And it is heavily concentrated in environments that are fast-paced, high stakes, and where everyone is aggressively projecting an image of absolute certainty and unshakable innovation.
So everyone is operating under the fake it till you make it mandate. But you assume you are the only one who is actually faking it.
Exactly. You think everyone else has it completely figured out.
And this tension builds until it finally snaps late one evening. They are working brutal hours trying to beat the burn rate, and Nina finally confesses her profound self-doubt to her manager. She fully expects Avery to agree with her and just fire her on the spot.
But instead, Avery provides the emotional turning point of the entire narrative.
Yeah.
Avery looks at this brilliant, exhausted 28-year-old and admits that after 8 years in the high-pressure tech industry, she still feels like a fraud half the time herself.
Which is such a relief to hear, honestly.
Yeah, Avery tells her, the people who are the most fiercely confident in this building are usually the ones who actually know the least. And the ones who are constantly worried they don't know enough, they're usually the ones who care the most about doing the work right.
Wow. That observation completely recontextualizes Nina's anxiety. Her self-doubt is no longer a symptom of her incompetence. It is a direct reflection of her conscientiousness. She is anxious because she understands the stakes. And this conversation mechanically redefines a concept that gets a ton of well-deserved criticism in the corporate world, which is culture fit.
Right, because culture fit has a very dark history.
Oh, yeah.
For years, critics have rightly pointed out that hiring for culture fit was a lazy, exclusionary tactic used by startups to build completely homogenous teams.
Yeah, the toxic tech bro monolith.
Exactly. It meant hiring people who looked like the founders, went to the same universities, and wanted to drink the same craft beer while playing ping pong.
Right. But Avery's interaction with Nina strips all of that away and shows what genuine cultural alignment is actually supposed to be. I mean, Nina doesn't look like James, she doesn't act like James, and she certainly doesn't walk around the office barefoot.
Thank goodness.
Right. But she is a perfect culture fit because she possesses a shared tolerance for the pain of iteration. She is willing to sit in the intense discomfort of failure and self-doubt because she cares deeply about building something meaningful.
Yeah, that shared resilience is the actual connective tissue of a functional startup. And when a team manages to push past the paralysis of imposter syndrome and fully commit to that iterative feedback loop, the underlying math of the business finally starts to shift.
Which takes us to month 6. It's October in San Francisco. And there is this brilliant, subtle visual detail noted in the case study. The yoga balls are gone.
Ah, yes.
They've been replaced with ergonomic office chairs.
A huge milestone.
It is. The baseline of stability has finally arrived. The team has shipped 3 major features that users actually want to pay for. The runway has been officially extended through new revenue, meaning they basically bought themselves time.
Right.
And at the Monday all-hands meeting, James points to a chart on the whiteboard where the revenue line is decisively trending up and to the right.
The machinery is working. They are beginning to generate real, sustainable value. And this brings us to the ultimate ambition of any startup. They don't just want to participate in a market, they want to be disruptive.
Okay, disruptive might be the most abused word in modern business.
Oh, without a doubt.
Every company with a new app claims they are disruptive. Someone launches, like a slightly faster way to order a sandwich, and calls it a disruption of the culinary paradigm.
Right. It has been totally hollowed out by marketing departments. But mechanically, true disruption occurs when an innovation radically alters an existing market, often making the traditional way of doing business entirely obsolete.
Like Uber.
Exactly. Uber didn't just introduce a new fleet of taxis, they disrupted the entire medallion system, the concept of dispatchers, and the fundamental human behavior of how we navigate cities. True disruption shifts the tectonic plates of an industry.
So for a piece of software to achieve that level of mass disruption, it cannot just be clever. It has to be architected in a very specific way.
Yes.
Nina updates her professional portfolio at the 6-month mark. She lists the 3 major features she successfully shipped, and she proudly adds a critical note. Her code is designed to scale. Let's dig into the mechanics of scaling, because it is fundamentally different from simple business growth, isn't it?
It is. This is the crux of the Silicon Valley economic model. Growth is linear. If you run a traditional law firm and you want to double your client base, you have to double your labor force.
Right. You hire more lawyers, lease more office space, buy more desks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your revenue goes up, but your costs go up at the exact same rate. Scaling, on the other hand, means decoupling your revenue from your labor costs. It means growing your customer base exponentially while your operational costs barely move.
So if Nina designs her code to scale, it means the software architecture is so robust and automated that it can handle 10 users or 1 million users without the servers crashing.
Right.
And crucially, without the company needing to hire 10,000 new engineers to manage the influx. The machine absorbs the labor. The cost of serving the 1 millionth user is just a fraction of a cent.
And that exponential leverage is the holy grail. It is the only mathematical way that a team of 12 exhausted people in a loft can build a product that impacts the entire globe.
But looking at the reality of this journey, the chaotic lack of resources, the terrifying math of the burn rate, the ghosting venture capitalists, the relentless internal battle with imposter syndrome, why would anyone willingly subject themselves to this?
It's a fair question.
Why not just take a comfortable, boring job at an established bank with a massive IT budget and an infinite runway?
Well, the answer lies in the final mechanical piece of the startup puzzle, which is equity.
Right.
Equity is the mechanism of ownership. Early-stage startups simply cannot afford to pay massive corporate salaries to attract top engineering talent like Nina. Instead, they compensate their early employees by granting them stock options, a percentage of the company itself.
It's the fundamental difference between being a tenant and being a landlord.
Oh, I like that.
If you are an employee at a massive corporation, you are a tenant. You can paint the walls, you can improve the apartment, and they will pay you a salary to do it. But you don't own the building. Equity means you hold the deed.
Exactly. It completely alters the psychology of the worker. Equity transforms an employee into a stakeholder. Nina isn't just clocking in to write isolated lines of code in exchange for a paycheck. She has a vested mathematical reason to care about the entire operation.
Yeah.
She cares about the pitch decks, the server costs, the user retention. If the ship sinks, her options are worthless and she loses the investment of her time and sweat. But if the ship manages to navigate the cliff, scale the product, and eventually go public, that tiny percentage could represent generational wealth.
So it's the alignment of individual success with corporate survival.
Precisely.
You know, looking back at the arc of Nina's first 6 months, it's incredible how these sterile business terms translate into such profound human experiences.
It really is.
We started with the chaotic realities of a startup, staring down a terrifyingly short runway. We explored the psychological distillation of pitch decks, the mechanical necessity to cannibalize your own work and pivot, and the heavy, isolating toll of a broken internal feedback loop causing imposter syndrome.
Yeah, a huge journey.
And we arrived at the triumph of scaling a product and earning equity in a vision you helped build. What is so compelling about this case study is that Nina's victory isn't some massive cinematic billionaire moment. She hasn't rung the bell at the New York Stock Exchange. But as the source material beautifully summarizes her 6-month milestone, it was small, it was real, it was hers.
It strips away the mythology and reminds us that behind every massive technological disruption, there are just people.
Just people.
Exhausted people fighting their own cognitive dissonances, iterating on their mistakes, and trying to build something resilient.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to reflect on the mechanics of this world and apply them to your own life. These concepts aren't restricted to software engineering. Have you ever felt that creeping, paralyzing imposter syndrome when you were thrust into a new role or trying to master a new skill?
Almost everyone has.
When a major project or a relationship completely failed to land the way you expected, did you view it as a total failure? Or did you allow yourself to leverage the lessons learned and pivot?
It is a remarkably powerful framework for personal resilience when you remove it from the context of venture capital.
It is, which leaves us with this final provocative thought to mull over. Startups only survive by fully embracing the philosophy of failing fast. They rely on incredibly tight, ruthless feedback loops to expose their flaws, improve their products, and avoid running out of resources.
Right.
What would happen if we applied that exact same mechanical framework to our personal lives? Are you giving yourself enough personal runway to fail fast, gather the data, and iterate on your own growth? Or are you demanding that every single thing you try be a pristine, cinematic masterpiece on the very first attempt?